What are your expectations for the G20 summit? It hasn't exactly got off to the best of starts.
No, it hasn't gotten off to the best of starts. I mean, between Angela Merkel's plane troubles and the last-minute cancellation of the Trump-Putin meeting, the agenda will have shifted somewhat. But we'll see how it goes from here. But definitely a very, very bad start for all sides.
Trump cancelled his meeting with the Russian president. Is this a missed opportunity for Washington?
First of all, it's got nothing to do with what he said it's about. It's got nothing to do with Ukraine. I mean, you can see that Donald Trump and his government, including the US Embassy in Kyiv and the State Department, showed basically no interest in the Kerch affair for the first couple of days. It was only when the Michael Cohen news dropped yesterday in the US media that he suddenly became interested in Kerch and used it as an excuse to call off the meeting. It's pretty clear that he's called it off because of domestic reasons in the United States. Obviously, his advisors have told him that hosting a meeting with Vladimir Putin at the moment is bad optics domestically, and that's the only clear reason why he's done it. I mean, from the Russian side, obviously there'll be some regret because they would have had an agenda to discuss, but ultimately, I'm not sure that the Russian side will be overly upset either. At the end of the day, they know that Trump is not fully in control in Washington, so he can't really make any deals, can he? I mean, anything he agrees to is likely to be overridden by his own Congress and Senate back home. So if you're in Vladimir Putin's shoes, I mean, what is there really to gain other than to develop the personal relationship? It's not like they're going to make any substantial deals during the meeting.
Well, earlier, Donald Tusk said that the EU is outraged with Russia's seizure of the Ukrainian vessels in Kerch and said the bloc will look at sanctions on Moscow in December. Could things be smoothed over during the summit?
Well, look, here we go again. I mean, if we just take the summit out of this question for a minute, you made the point that Donald Tusk made. Again, here we are. It's 5 days later before he opens his mouth. So, I mean, who has he spoken to, or who has kind of, suddenly jolted him into action? I mean, fundamentally, I think the impression I got earlier in the week was that the European side kind of understood that Ukraine was basically at fault here, at least shared half of the blame, and that's why they were being so quiet about it. I mean, now we've got a situation where because Trump has used it as the excuse to cancel the meeting, suddenly they've come into life. But let's just take it out a little bit here. I mean, the basic issue about the meeting here is that neutral people will be upset about this because the two biggest military powers on earth, it's absolutely crazy that the two leaders have no relationship whatsoever at the moment, and that the top echelons of both powers don't meet very often. I know Bolton was in Moscow recently, but they don't seem to have any form of relationship, and that's really, really scary. I mean, and the other point as well is that if you look at the broader point here is that the longer the US and Russia are not meeting at the top level, the longer the estrangement between Russia and the West is going to go on, and the worse it's going to get. And I mean, at what point does Russia just finally say, okay, we can't deal with these people anymore? I mean, what if Trump wins a second term in 2 years' time, and what, we're going to have 6 more years of this?
Angela Merkel is still meeting with Putin. That will go ahead. Why is Germany taking such a different approach, do you think, compared to the US?
Because the simple fact is that it's more important for Germany. I mean, at the end of the day, I would bet you any amount of money that Donald Trump had never even heard of the Azov Sea until last weekend. I mean, for Germany, which is not very far from Russia and has a shared history, I mean, this is a far more urgent matter. And from the German point of view, I'm sure there's people around Merkel, maybe even Merkel herself, saying, look, something eventually has to be done about this Ukraine-Russia standoff. It's going on for 4.5 years now. I mean, how long more it's going to continue? I mean, is it going to outlive Poroshenko? Is it going to outlive Putin's current term, for example, presumably his final term? I mean, people in Berlin, a lot of them, and in Paris for that matter, must be exasperated at this. I mean, where does it end? And at what stage is Washington going to put its foot down and say, this can't continue? Or is it actually the reality that Washington wants this to continue because having Ukraine destabilized in this matter suits their geopolitical objectives, which it appears to be very much so the case?
One of the most anticipated meetings on the summit's sidelines is between Trump and the Chinese president. What is next for the two countries, considering their plummeting relations over trade?
I think that the China-Trump meeting is also connected to Russia to a degree because, as we know, Russia and China become much closer, and there is an issue going on at the moment. If you read people like Henry Kissinger and even Mike Pence kind of intimated it recently, there are some people in America that feel that America should join up with Russia kind of against China. Obviously, that's not going to happen because Moscow's not interested, but that will also be involved in this meeting. I think the big issue for Europe and for Russia involving the Trump meeting with the Chinese president is that, can things get worse? I mean, if it's already bad between Russia and America, what if it gets bad between China and America and gets worse and worse and worse? And we end up in a scenario where Xi Jinping is not even able to talk to Trump. I mean, that's the worry going forward. And obviously, you mentioned Germany earlier. I mean, the Germans have to be saying to themselves, if they're thinking about their own national interests, I mean, this really can't continue. I mean, America's become essentially the most disruptive influence in the world diplomatically at the moment.